So, a warm welcome to all the participants and our invited speaker to the fourth day of the ACT sponsored training program on IoT powered solutions for healthcare innovations. Dr. Sumit Darak sir is with us today to share his expertise in the field of edge computing and the use of FPGAs and various algorithms that can be implemented on FPGA for the edge computing applications. Welcome, sir. Now I hand over the session to Ms. Ramya.
Mm, Warm good afternoon to all. Happy to introduce an eminent person, Dr. Sumit J. Darak, presently an associate professor in the Department of ECE at Indraprastha Institute of Information Technology, IIIT Delhi. Dr. Sumit received his Bachelor of Engineering degree in Electronics and Telecommunication from Pune University, India, and PhD degree from the School of Computer Engineering, Nanyang Technological University, NTU, Singapore, in 2013. Early, he was working as an assistant system engineer in Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, Pune, and was also a visiting research student at Massey University, Auckland, New Zealand. He worked as an intern at EADS Innovation Works for Airbus at Singapore and was pursuing postdoctoral research at Common Labs Excellence Center at France for the project GREAT, that is Green Cognitive Radio for Energy Aware Wireless Communication Technologies Evolution. He was also a visiting researcher at IEOR at IIT Bombay. Dr. Sumit has been awarded Indian government's DST Inspire Faculty Award, which is a prestigious award for young researchers under 2 years with grant. His research interests include design and implementation of multi-standard wireless communication receivers, as well as application of machine learning algorithms and decision-making policies for various wireless communication applications. He has published 70 plus referred international publications, including journals and conferences. Sir has also received Best Paper Award in IET National Conference. Sir, at this juncture, I welcome you to the portals of our institute, and we are indeed very happy to have you with us to deliver a technical talk as a part of this STTP. Hope the participants will have a cherishing time listening to his lecture. Thank you, sir. Welcome you once again. Over to you, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We
Yeah,
can hear.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Deepa and Ramya, for the invitation and for the introduction. So I'm just trying to share my screen. So we just need to make sure that they are visible. Just few checks because of this online mode. We need to do it.
Yes, sir.
I
It's
hope the
visible.
slides are visible. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and they are moving.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. So I have around 2 hours, right? So around 1.5 hours, or how long is the session?
So 1.5 to 1:45 you can take. After that,
Okay.
15 minutes will be a QA session, sir.
Okay. Okay. Good. So, the today's topic is how to implement the algorithms on the system on chip, and how to make the architecture intelligent and the reconfigurable. So we can. I have mainly at the end of my lecture, I have also focused on the some of the simple machine learning decision making algorithms, and how to build the system and how to demonstrate the system where we have integrated the wireless physical layer with the machine learning algorithm. But here the focus of my talk is to give you the understanding about how we map the algorithms on system on chip, how we plan the reconfigurable architecture, and how to make the reconfigurable architecture intelligent. So that is the focus of the today's talk. Uh, so before we get started, if you have any queries, so I can see the chat window as well. So if you have any queries, you can type it in the chat window. I can take in between, or I can take it at the end. I'll prefer to have the more interactive session. So in between, if you have queries, it will be good to have a discussion during the lecture instead of just waiting for the end of the lecture. Okay. So So let's begin with the today's talk on the machine learning on SOC, how to design, build the intelligent and reconfigure architecture. So before I begin, so I just give you the brief introduction about the IIIT Delhi. So IIIT Delhi is the state university. It is a completely autonomous university which is situated in Delhi. It was established in 2008 with a strong focus on the research and development. So at IIIT Delhi, we as a faculty, we have to contribute significantly on the research and other innovation activities. Though we are the IT-based institute, we along with the CSE and ECE, we have the other departments, computational biology, mathematics department, social sciences research, and the design department. And we have the unique undergrad courses where we have the CS plus X approach, where we have the computer science plus mathematics, computer science plus social design, social systems, computer science plus design, computer science plus computational biology, and the separate EC as undergraduate courses. And in addition, we have the master courses in the, especially in the CSE and ECE. And since it's a research-based university, we have very strong PhD program. We have almost now 200 plus PhD student in our campus, along with the around 85 faculties. So a few of the highlights at the IIIT Delhi. So we have the various centers. For example, we have the first centers on the cybersecurity, which was established in 2011. Then we have the recently Center for the Design and New Media, which is completely sponsored by the Tata Foundations. Then we have the Center for Artificial Intelligence, which is completely sponsored by the Infosys Foundation. Recently, we have established the Innovation and the Incubation Center, which where most of the funding comes from the private industry as well as the state government. So we also do a lot of activity with the state government. For example, during the Corona, we have the app which was developed by the Delhi government, which give us the details about the beds, ventilators available in all the hospitals in India. It was developed at the IIIT Delhi. In terms of the ranking, also being a small institute, but we are doing quite well in terms of the ranking. Campus is also green. We have got the AICTE award for the green campus. And we have also recently started the PG diploma program in the data science and AI in association with the IBM. And I think the first first batch is going to start in this month itself. I think there is an innovation, there is an inauguration. Either it has happened in the couple of days before, or it is planned in the next 2-3 days. So NRIF ranking also we are doing quite well. Recently, in the last few months, we have got a 100 crore fund from the DST under Technological Innovation Hub. So there are 25 such hubs are planned by the DST all over India, and these are called as a mini DST. So usually in India, all the government funds are distributed by the DST based upon the grant proposal. But to make the system more distributed, DST has come up with the idea of having the mini DST at the multiple institutes. So in addition to the most of the old IITs, IIIT also were able to get the 100 crore grant for this center. And also last month only we have got approval for another Center for Health for about with the funding of around 12 crores from the Delhi state government. So a lot of activities are going on into the research and innovation at IIIT Delhi. And in terms of the CS, since we are mostly the IT ranking in India, the CS in terms of the CS ranking, we are around in the top 10. So within the 12 years, we are able to reach the within the top 10. And here the ranking is based upon your research publications and the quality of those publications and the citation from 2008 to 2020. So I just wanted to show the video, but I don't know whether it will be visible or not. Okay, there is some issues are there. So okay, so I don't think we'll be able to watch the video. Okay, so let me know if you are able to hear the audio.
No, sir, we can't hear.
Okay, okay,
While
then let's
selecting, you should
yeah.
have selected along with the audio.
Okay, okay, let's skip the this part. It's just a video about Triple IT Delhi, but let's skip it. Okay, so let's start with the today's lecture. So in the today's lecture, we are going to focus on the algorithms to architecture mapping, why it is important. We'll discuss about the system on chip, the configurable and the intelligent architecture. So just implementing the algorithms on the architecture is not sufficient. You need to make the algorithms intelligent as well as the reconfigurable. Okay. Then we'll discuss about the how to make the reconfigurable algorithms or reconfigurable architectures intelligent via using the multi-amp bandwidth algorithms and how to implement the same on the hardware. And we'll see discuss about how to do the performance analysis on the hardware. So this work, most of this work has been done by my BTech student Sai Santosh, and his work has been published in IEEE ISCAS this year, then IEEE Transaction on Circuit and System, and also day before yesterday we got another publication in IEEE Open Journal on Circuit and System, with there was a special issue on 5G and 6G communication. So the tutorials and the source codes are also available on the GitHub. So if you want to know more about this work, look at the GitHub page. And also the video is also available, which discuss the IEEE ISCAS. Since the conference was virtual, we prepared the video which was present in IEEE ISCAS. Okay, so this was about the brief introduction outline about the work and the source material if you are interested in this kind of work. Okay, so now if you look at this plot, you can see that on the x-axis you have the different year, and on the y-axis you can see that you have something market in billion US dollar. And you can see that the growth is there is an exponential increase in the growth. Okay, so what it is saying, it is showing that there is some market which is growing exponentially in terms of its business value. And if you look at this link, it talks about something about the cloud computing. So it says that there is a significant surge in the cloud computing market. And one of the reason is that you have a lot of devices which are home automation or the assistance system devices which have been distributed all over the world. And all these devices are communicating with the cloud. Means all these devices are actually being called as intelligent devices, but they are actually a dumb devices which just collect the data and send to the cloud, and all the processing has takes place in the cloud. So the cloud resources are limited. Though our population is growing at a very high rate, and we are also, each person you can see that at least having the 3 or 4 types of the electronic devices which need a communication with the cloud. But actually the cloud resources are limited. You have only the few number of data centers. So if you take a very simple mathematical example, suppose that each person queries 98 minutes per day. For example, you make a query to such devices like Alexa, Google devices, or you use the other devices which communicates with the cloud, say around 98 minutes per day. So if you take the population of only 1 million, which is a very small population, you will need a cloud which process around 94 terabyte of data, which is a huge amount of data. And if you look at our population, which is around 3.8 billion, then we'll need to process around 11 PB of data, assuming that each person queries only for 3 minutes per day. So 3 minutes is a very small. Out of 24 hours, you are talking about only 3 minutes per day. Okay. So, and with the after COVID-19, with everybody sitting just idle at home and working from home, your queries are expected to go up because you are going to use the most of these devices are deployed at home. In the office, you are not allowed to deploy, but at the home, you have all these devices. So all the queries are expected to go up. From the other side, you can see that there is a lot of talk about the industry 4.0, and you will see that all this factory automation, the machines are connected to the cloud. So that means that the lot of machines are going to be get connected to the cloud. That means there is a additional load on the cloud from the factory automation or the industry 4.0. So this indicate in the future the exponential growth in the data center will going to continue, but we need to solve. We may not have the sufficient resources to meet the requirement. From the building the cloud data center is not that difficult. You can build a cloud and data center, but the problem is that there are a lot of environmental impacts and the security issues with the cloud computing. For example, data centers where your data is stored or processed consume significant amount of electricity due to the cooling requirement. You need to make sure that the data centers are maintained below certain degree temperature. Then data redundancy. You might have to duplicate your data at the multiple data center so whenever the one data center is down, you still get access to the data from the other data center. And also you need to meet certain quality of service, which means that the data center should be distributed all over the world so that your quality of service, for example, latencies are limited. So it is expected that the total data centers all over the world will consume at least 20% of the global electricity by 2025. And you will see that there is a lot of work has been done to make the data centers as green as possible. If you are interested in the data centers, please watch there are set of videos from the Google on how their data centers have been designed and how they improve the data efficiency. On YouTube, there are 6 to 7 videos are there from the Google, and similar data center videos are also there from the Facebook, also on the from the Microsoft, how they are building the data centers either in the North Pole or under the sea to improve the efficiency. Okay, so you can watch those video. I had one video, but since there is some issue with the video, we'll skip that one. But if you are interested in the green aspects of the data center, or you want to understand how the data center works, how the data centers are designed, please watch those videos available on the YouTube. So the green aspects is one issue. Another aspect is the security aspect. For example, all your home conversation are being recorded and being sent to the cloud. And once it goes outside your network, you don't have a control over who has access to their data. Okay, and this is a very big challenge with the having your data being processed inside in the cloud instead of at your edge. Okay, so there are a lot of news architectures. So I have given the some of the this year article where you can see that the Amazon workers are listening to the Alexa recording. And you will see that there are a lot of news where the Google and the Alexa have distributed these machines in the beginning for free of cost. And they are not doing the charity. Actually, they distributed this one because they needed the data to train their algorithm so that their performance can be improved. So they distributed such things quite at a very low cost in the beginning, and even now these are very cheap devices. But how it helping them? It helps them to collect a lot of data. For example, in case of the natural language processing, a person sitting in the US can't get the data of the Indian communication happening in the local language. So by using these devices, they are able to get a huge amount of data, which they will be using to train their algorithm. And then they will be coming up with a novel devices which works well for the all kind of environment. So they are using, the Amazon workers are able to listen this recording. Same case with the Googles. So they are able to get a lot of data from their devices, your smartwatch, your mobile phones. So nowadays, if you see that even sometimes if you start talking on your phone, that Google Assistant automatically pops up and it try to help you or try to say that whether they can be helpful for any problem. So there is a lot of data collection is going on, and therefore there is a significant concern about the security aspect, privacy aspects. Okay, and in addition to this, you can say that the legal data collection, there is also a case of for the illegal data collection. For example, once your data goes outside the network, and if there is cyber attacks happens, your data will be exposed to the all those other people. So the aim is to see how we can make the intelligence distributed. Right now, your entire data is sent to the cloud and entire processing intelligence happens at the cloud. But can we do the distributed or decentralized intelligence? Some people also call it the edge computing, where some of the processing can be done at the edge devices or gateway devices instead of only the cloud devices. So this is also called as the distributed computing, distributed intelligence, and the aim is to how to build the devices at this level as well as this level, so that you get the you can improve the previous aspects of the data processing, security, and the green environmental impact, and also you reduce the load on the cloud processing. Okay, and that is the motivation of going from the cloud-based intelligence to the decentralized intelligence. Okay, so this completes the first part where I have explained you the need of the edge AI and why there is a need to implement all these intelligence algorithm at the edge or the gateway devices instead of the intelligence devices. Now in the next stop, I'll introduce you to the system on chip concept, where I'll explain you now if you want to implement this machine learning, AI, or more complex signal processing algorithms on the hardware, you need a corresponding compatible or you need a corresponding capable hardware. So I'll give you the brief overview about what are the recent advances in the hardware domain, which makes it possible to implement these algorithms on the edge or the gateway devices. Okay, so in case you have any question, we can stop for 1 minute before I can go on to the uh, next section on the system on chip. Okay, let me know if you can type the question in the chat window, and then we can take it forward. Okay, any question? Okay, okay. So let's start with the basic understanding about the system. So everybody is aware about what is the embedded system. Inside the embedded system, you have the processor, you have the coprocessor, you have the memory where your instructions and data are stored, and you have the multiple peripherals. So here peripherals can be your external units where you can communicate with the external units, for example, SD card, Ethernet, or it can be an additional coprocessor. And inside the memory, you can say that you have the hierarchical memory system where you have the L1 cache, L2 cache, and the L3 cache and main memory. So these are the basics of any embedded system on which you build your edge or the gateway devices. So here the term system on chip. So there are usually two terms called as a system on chip and the system on board. So this is nothing but your system on board. So you have the one PCB where you have the different units which are interconnected together to get the system on board. And what is the system on chip? You have only one chip where everything is integrated inside the chip. So there is no communication outside the chip. You don't have the two units communicating outside the chip. Both the units are integrated inside a single chip. Okay. So system on chip is a single silicon chip that can be used to implement the functionality of the entire system rather than using the several different physical chips on the board. Okay. So you will see that over the years, our mobile phones or if our FM radio, the size are going down and down. And why it is happening? Because we have, instead of using the multiple separate components, we are trying to put them on a single chip so that our size and the quality of service can be improved. For instance, you will see that in the few years back, having the Bluetooth connectivity was not that easily available. You will have some mobile phones which will support which will not support Bluetooth, and you will have some mobile phones which will support the Bluetooth. Same is the case for the Wi-Fi. If you look at the era around 2001 to 2008 or 9, you will have some mobile phones which will support Wi-Fi, some will not support the Wi-Fi. Okay, and why that was happening? Because you had to use the additional chips to support those additional protocols. And then you over the times you had the SoC, where now you have the Bluetooth unit implemented inside the your processor chip. So instead of having the separate chip for the processor as well as ARM processor, or processor as well as Bluetooth, you have a single chip which supports the Bluetooth functionality or Bluetooth protocol on a same silicon. Okay, so with this advantage, you can see that your size has reduced and you got the Bluetooth as a default support protocol in your today's mobile devices. So what was the advantage of going from the system on board to the system on chip is that you get a very significant improvement in performance. Because you can see that you have the less propagation delay because you are internally when you communicate inside a single chip, your communication distance is shorter. You have the wires with the less capacitance, so your performance is better and you will get the lower delay or latency in case of the intra-chip communication compared to the inter-chip communication. So in case of the electronics, if you want to drive the signal outside the chip, you need a typically higher voltage compared to the signal which you want to drive inside the chip. So if you want to transfer the data inside the chip, the voltage levels are less compared to the if you want to send the signal outside the chip. So once the voltage of levels are less, your power consumption will improve. Also outside the chip, you have this metal connection, metal wires, and that will have a significantly larger capacitance compared to the inside the chip. Okay, so that means the power efficiency of the multi-chip solution or system on board is poor compared to the system on chip. Device size has reduced, which we already have experienced. And once everything is happening inside the chip, you have the better privacy, security aspects are there, less interference from the environmental things, and the less chances of the breakdown. Okay, so these are the advantage you get over the system on board. Again, the cost has reduced, so more or less, if you remember around 2001 to 2008 or 9, we used to buy a separate device for the FM radio. We had the separate smaller device for FM radio and then separate mobile phone. But then after that, you don't nowadays, I don't think anyone will buy a separate device for the listening to the FM radio. Everything is integrated, either a part of your laptop or your mobile phones or your iPad or any tablet. Okay, so you can see that the cost has significantly gone down. The amount of the cost you are paying for the mobile with the features in the 2015, with the same cost you are getting a significantly additional features today. So the cost is also going down. But the things are changing, because now the customers are want something better. Okay, for example, in the today's one, there is a less flexibility. For example, in case of the PC and laptop, suppose if you want to upgrade the RAM, okay, you can remove your 8 GB chip and you can put the 16 GB chip, because it's a system on board. But this is not possible in case with the internal memory, because if you want to increase the memory, you need to replace the chip, which is not possible. So in case of the SoC, you have a very limited flexibility, because everything is inside the chip and there is no way you can change the what are the resources available inside the chip. Also, all these SoCs are defined for the application specific. For example, we saw the example of the ARM processor with the Bluetooth SoC. Now, in that Bluetooth, it will support the Bluetooth protocol, but it won't support the newest Bluetooth protocol which has come, or it won't be flexible enough to support the Wi-Fi. So these are application specific SoC. They may not be targeted for some other applications. And also the complexity, that skill set required to such SoCs are very high, because for example, in case of the system on board, you have a separate engineer which takes care of the Bluetooth, you will have the separate engineers which take care of the processor, you will have separate engineer which takes care of peripheral. But in case of the SoC, you will have you will need engineers which will need to have the knowledge of all those things, because they are now part of single chip. You can't have the team with separate teams working on the different aspects in case of the system on board. In case of the SoC, you need a person who have the very good understanding about the entire SoC, and also the way the things happens in the system on board are different than the system on chip. So you need the skill set required for the design of the system on chip is significantly complex, and you need to learn a lot of things when you move from the system on board to the system on chip. Okay. Also, as I told you, the customer demands are changing. For example, if you take the example of the mobile phone, when we moved from the 3G to 4G, we all have to buy the new mobile phone. And the same thing is happening when we will go for the 4G to 5G, that we will have to buy the new mobile phone. But the customer don't want that. Customer want the next generation hardware to be more flexible and the scalable. Over the years, if you see from the last 20-30 years, our requirement as a customer, our requirements were different. As a customer, we wanted the device to be of lower cost, lower power, and more features. If you see the mobile evolution in the last 20 years, our requirement that we want more features, we want lower cost, and we want our battery life to be last as long as possible. And this has been satisfied by our industry quite well. We are able to get the mobile phones which we are able to get a lot of features, and we are actually quite satisfied with what we are going with. All the features are there in the mobile phone. But now the customers are starting demanding the flexibility as well as scalability. What do you mean by flexibility? Flexibility means the customer don't want to buy a new mobile just to switch from the 4G to 5G. They want to have the mobile phone which should be able to reconfigure or upgrade itself to the 5G. Okay, or from 4G to 5G. So they want a device to be have the more flexible system. For example, in case of your home TV one, you might have bought the LCD screen, but it might not be smart. And now if you want to go to the smart TV, most probably either you want to have this Chrome additional dongles, which are not that efficient, which is you can also see that you are going for the system on board because you are adding the additional component external to the system. But you want your existing LED to be upgraded to the smart LED, and which is not possible in the today's system. If you want to go from the existing LED TV to the smart LED TV, either you need to add the additional external unit, which is called the system on board, which will affect the performance, or you need to replace or buy a new smart TV. Okay, so but what customer want? Customer want that their TV should be upgraded to the smart TV with with the some configuration or upgradation. And if you remember, this happens quite well in the software domain, because in case of the app or in case of the other software, you can do the remote upgradation. So this is being supported at the software level, but it is not being supported at the hardware level. And the aim is to make sure that over the next 10-15 years, we have this flexible hardware. So that's why the flexibility is important, and the scalability is also another thing. For example, if you are a designer, you are working in the industry, and if you are working on, say, mobile phone, and if I told you that if you we have the three different categories of the mobile phone, one for the low cost, one for the medium level, and one is for the high end. And as a designer, I told you that for low level you use one processor architecture, for the mid range you use the another processor architecture, and for the high end you should use this processor architecture. That means as a designer, you need to learn three different architecture, and you need to write a code and build a system for the three different architecture. That means it's a significantly steep learning curve is there. But how about having the scalable hardware, where the same architecture is being used for all the three types of mobile phones? Only the number of features available on each architecture changes depending upon your cost and the other requirement. So as a designer, I have to study only one architecture, and only I need to study what are the different features or how many features are available in each of the architecture for three different types of phone. So as a designer, I'll always choose the second one, and it is always easy to train your manpower or your all your engineers for this scalable hardware or scalable architecture than your non-scalable architecture. So you need a single platform that can be scaled from the low end to another end. So that's why there is a lot of demand for the scalable and the flexible architecture in the industry. So in this direction, a lot of things has happened in the last 10-12 years. In the past, we used to have only the processor as a single chip. Then people have started exploring the ASIC on the FPGA. Since I worked on the FPGA, I have included only the FPGA, but you can see the ASIC and FPGA are more or less parallel to each other. Then people try to implement the processor inside the FPGA so that you can implement the complete system on a one chip, because you can see that usually any digital system can be divided into the two parts. One is the data path and the control path, and data path is usually implemented in the ASIC and the FPGA, and the control path is nothing but your processor. Okay, so people explored how about implementing the soft processor inside the FPGA, which is called the Pico Plus or the Microplus processor. But they didn't get a lot of improvement in the functionality, because if you see your Intel and other processor here, they are usually worked around 2 gigahertz or 4 gigahertz, while this guy is working at the same as the FPGA clocks, which is around 200 megahertz or 500 megahertz. So you are not getting the sufficient performance. So then people went for the two chip system, where you on a single board you have the processor and the FPGA. But as we have discussed before, since you have these external connections, all the issues will pop up here, and this has led to the new FPGA system, where on a FPGA you have this silicon where you implement this hard processor. And this PowerPC processor was from the IBM, and if you see the Vertex 5 FPGA from the Xilinx, they had the single SoC on which you have the FPGA for the data path implementation, and you have the PowerPC processor for the controller implementation. And they got the significant improvement performance with using this with compared to this other solutions which you had. Okay. And then what they did, they identify which is the best processor available in the market, and at that time the ARM processor was the best processor available in the market. So they replace the PC processor with the ARM processor, and they got the this Zinc SoC. Some of you might have heard about this Zinc SoC. So this came into the market around 2010, around 2012, and it is quite popular in most of the startups. You will see their designs are no longer based upon only the FPGA part, but they are now replacing the FPGA on with this Zinc SoC. And the recent 4-5 years, things have been changed. So just to give you the idea about this Zinc SoC, which is in the market from 2010, you have this dual core ARM processor where core 0, core 1. You have the memory interface to store your data outside the chip. You also have the internal memory inside the this ARM processor. You have the peripherals to communicate with the outside world, and then on a single chip you have the FPGA, which is the yellow color, and the communication between them happens with the AXI interface. So understanding this AXI interface is very important to get your design working on this SoC. And this SoC is called as an all programmable SoC. Why it is called as an all programmable SoC? Because everything is programmable. Your ARM processor is also programmable, and FPGA indicates that it's a field programmable gate array. So that means FPGA is also programmable, and that's why it is called as a all programmable SoC. And that is the reason that this is being advertised as one of the one of the chip which can solve the problem of your flexibility, because your this card part hardware is programmable, as well as scalability, because you can see that for this chip you are using FPGA and dual core FPGA. Dual core. Sometimes you can use quad core, sometimes you use the quad core or octa core, but your architecture remains the same. For as a designer, if you understand the ARM architecture, you will able to switch between this multi-processor or multi-core system. So in the last 2 to 4 years, people have developed the new chip based upon this one. For example, this is the Zinc one, okay, SoC, and this is now the latest one is the MP SoC. So in this case, you can see that you have the multi-processor system. The FPGA is more or less same, but you have the ARM processor, which is the quad core ARM processor. You have the real-time processor, which is the dual core real-time processor. You have the GPU, small GPU implemented on a single chip, along with your memory and the other co-processor. So you can see that on a single chip, you have so many facility. And then if you have such a chip, you will be able to implement your algorithms on the such SoC. Recently, couple of years back, they have come up with the extended this MP SoC to the RF SoC. So RF SoC, you along with your all these units, you also have the RF front ends and everything on a single chip. So it will, for the wireless communication application, you can have the ADC, DAC, a digital front end, analog front end on a single chip. So your system, your communication system becomes more compact. And if you see the most of the 5G base station, they will be making use of this chip, because in case of the 5G, though our deployment, everybody is saying that it will be happening in the next 2-3 years, it is a very simple version of the 5G. And you will see that next 10 years, you will keep on upgrading the new and new features on the 5G. So you don't want to replace the hardware, right? You want the hardware to be reconfigurable, and that's why these RF SoCs are being used in the 5G hardware. Uh, so this completes the discussion on our SoC, what are the things has happened in the SoC domain, how the architecture evolution has happened over the last 20 years to make to build the chips which will be able to implement your signal processing, AI, ML algorithms on this chip, and so that your data processing can be moved from the cloud to the gateways or the edge devices. Okay. So if you have any doubt regarding the SoCs or this one, let me know. I'll take a break of say 30 seconds or 1 minute. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll move to the next section, where we'll discuss that why it is important to implement algorithms efficiently on the architectures, and how to make the algorithms reconfigurables and intelligent. So RFSoC is nothing but on a single chip you have the FPGA, you have the uh, ARM quad-core processor, you have the real-time processor, you have the GPU, and you have some of the dedicated IPs. For example, in case of the 5G, we are going to use the LDPC and the polar encoding. So they have the dedicated IPs or algorithms, dedicated hardware for implementing those things, along with the ADCs and DAC. So in the till now, what used to happen? You used to have this FPGA or the SoC chip, and then you used to have this analog front end where you connect your antenna. And so if you see that, then these are the external wires. And to remove this external connection, now this part has been moved inside the SoC. So now you have the single chip where you have the digital front end as well as analog front end. And again, the concept is that trying to move as much as possible inside the single SoC. Okay. Any other doubt? So now we discuss about the algorithms, we discuss about the SoC, and I don't need to talk about the AI ML algorithm because everybody is now seems to be expert on how to develop the deep learning algorithms and all. So my focus is on, now given the algorithms, given that you have designed the algorithms, how to make it work on the SoC. Okay, so as we have seen, now consider that you have been given the chip that has the, say, ARM processor, FPGA, real-time processor, and all those things are there. And then you have this algorithm. So for example, here I have taken the simple deep learning algorithms. You have the convolution, pooling layers, multiple layers, then the fully connected layers, and you may have the activation functions in between, such as the ReLU or softmax, and at the end you have the another activation or loss function called softmax. And you want to implement this algorithm on the SoC. So I'm just trying to explain you what are the steps involved to map these algorithms on the SoC. So the first thing you need to decide, now you have the chip which has the two part, whether you have the processing system which has the ARM processors and the other co-processors, and you have the FPGA which is the programmable logic which is called as a PL. Now you need to divide your algorithms and you need to decide which part of your algorithms is present in which part of SoC. Because you have so many units inside the SoC, you need to get the desired power consumption requirement, or to get the desired latency requirement, or to get the desired uh, power consumption, contingency, latency, and the accuracy requirement. You need to divide your algorithms between the hardware and software, and this is called as a hardware software co-design. So what do you mean by hardware software co-design? In the hardware software co-design, you divide your algorithms into the different sections, and you implement each sections in the different part of SoC. For example, some F1 you may plan to design in FPGA, so then you need to write a Verilog or VHDL code for that F1 part. While F2 you may want to divide into implement into the ARM processor, so you may write a C code and use the compiler to implement it. And also you may have to establish the communication between the F1 and F2, and that you here in this case you might have to use the AXI protocol to have the communication between the F1 and F2. And it is very difficult to look at the algorithm and say that, okay, this part should go in the PL, this part should go into the PS. You may have to do a lot of profiling, lot of combinations, and then come up with the optimal algorithm. So there are a lot of tools are available for profiling. All the tools are again at the very beginning or the starting phase. So you may have to have a significant experience or expertise in this domain to get the best possible or optimum division of your algorithms between the hardware and the software. So you need to play around with the different divisions between your chip. If you consider the Zinc SoC, you may have to try the different division between your ARM processor and FPGA to choose this one. If you are considering the more advanced one, you will have the ARM processor, RP, or real-time processor, and the GPU and the FPGA, and then you need to decide which part goes where. Okay, so these are the main aspects of hardware software co-design. And again, it's another interesting field, and again, it takes some time to gain expertise in this domain. If you are interested in this domain, or if you want to know more about this domain, usually we have the 1 month long course or the regular courses at IIIT Delhi, 1 week courses or 1 month long courses where we discuss the theory part, as well as we have the experimental labs based tutorials to understand the hardware software code design. You can look at my website. The details of all these workshops have been given there. Also, as a part of this online semester, since we are teaching online, we have also made our lectures available online. So I'm teaching the second year embedded logic design course at the IIIT Delhi. And if you search it, you will see the lecture, not the lecture video, lab videos are online now. And the lecture videos will be online in the few months. But at least the lab video, you can have a look at this, and you may make use of them in your courses or for improving your understanding about this hardware software co-design. So as I told you, mapping the algorithms to the architecture is again one part of design, but you need to make sure that your design is also reconfigurable. For instance, you may see that when you train your deep learning algorithm, it works well for one data set, but it doesn't work well for the another data set. Or for example, your deep learning algorithms work well in the morning, but it doesn't give that much accuracy in the evening. And if you want to implement such algorithms on the hardware, you can't implement all those possible models on the hardware because it will take a lot of resources, area, and it will also consume a lot of power to implement all the algorithms in parallel. So here the reconfigurability aspects of FPGA comes into the picture. So FPGA stands for the field programmable gate array. So that means FPGAs are reconfigurable in the field, and that's the reason they are getting more and more popular. So via FPGA, you can build the reconfigurable regions inside the FPGA, and you can replace that part with that as per your requirement. For example, in the morning, you can have that part to implement one filter, while in the afternoon, you can switch to the another filter. In the evening, you can switch to the another filter, so that you get the desired accuracy without compromising on your area and the power requirement. So here you can see that this part of my hardware can work as a RM1, RM2, RM3, RM4, and so on. For example, this convolution layer, if it is implemented here, I can switch between the filter F1, F2, F3, F4 in the real time without the need of any manual intervention. So that's the reason that the FPGAs are getting more and more popular over the ASIC, because the people are demanding the flexibility, and this is the flexibility that achieved by using FPGA. So what is the advantage of your reconfigurability? You get the lower power consumption because you are using the fewer resources. For example, if you want to implement the module A and module B, you will need a area which is twice the area. But because of the reconfigurable region, you are using the same area of the chip, and you are switching between the module A and module B. And what is the advantage of this one? You are able to get the lower power consumption. You are able to fit the larger device on a smaller FPGA. and the smaller FPGA, that means your cost is less and you can go for the lower end FPGA for your product. Okay, and also you can provide the higher features. For example, if I tell you that to the customer that I have developed the algorithm, but it gives the 80% accuracy in the morning, but only 60% accuracy in the evening. But with this one, I can see that I am giving the customer which gives the 80% in the morning and around same accuracy in the evening, because I'll be able to switch between the optimal algorithm for the morning case as well as optimal algorithm with the evening case without compromising on my area and the power consumption. So it gives a lot of feature richness to your product. Okay, and the upgradability. For example, you have designed the algorithms for morning and evening, but maybe later customer wants to have some new algorithms for the afternoon. You don't need to recall the products. You can just need to add the additional bit stream which will configure it for the afternoon part. This is not possible in the ASIC based SoC. This is possible only in the FPGA based SoC. And because of all these things, the FPGAs are getting a lot of significance in the today's applications. Okay, so what we discuss about the hardware software design, like how to implement the algorithms on the architecture. We discuss about how to make the architecture reconfigurable via FPGA based SoC. But developing the reconfigurable architectures are not sufficient. For example, you have given the customer that my architecture shift between the three algorithms, but you need to take care of switching between the algorithm. So it won't be able to switch between the algorithms manually. Then that product has the less impact, because now the customer has to manually switch between the algorithm, which is usually not possible, especially in the IoT domain where the most of the devices are deployed it in the remotely. So you want a architecture which is not only reconfigurable, but it should be intelligent. And what does it intelligence means? That means it should be able to learn from its environment, and then it should be able to adapt the hardware as per the environmental need. For example, it should be able to detect that now we are switching from the morning to the afternoon. So I should reconfigure my hardware with the algorithm which is optimum for the afternoon, and the same case for the evening. The same will be true for the algorithms which are deployed in the other environment. For example, in case of the wireless networks, it may happen based upon your signal to noise ratio. Your algorithms, for example, channel estimation algorithms may change. Sometimes when the signal to noise ratio is very good, that means your signal power is good, you may not need a channel estimation. So your delay will be lower. But when the signal to noise ratio is bad, you will need a channel estimation algorithm. So you should be able to detect the environment, and based upon that, your architecture should be intelligent enough to take the decision on its half. So to enable the intelligence at the reconfigurable hardware, you need a decision making algorithms. And this decision making algorithm is another field of the machine learning. For example, you might have heard about the reinforcement learning algorithm, multi-arm bandit algorithm. So these are the decision making algorithms. They try to depict the human beings. They try to learn the environment on their own and try to estimate the corresponding environment changes in the environment and try to take the decision on your own. Okay, so this is there is a lot of progress has been happening on the design of the intelligent and the reconfigurable hardware, and the same concept, since I worked in the AI domain, architecture domain, as well as the wireless physical layer, I can see that the same concept is application in the both one. In wireless domain, you have the data modulation, pre-coding, waveform modulation, and for example, your modulation scheme can change based upon your environment. Your OFDM modulation, you can do the additional windowing and the filtering based upon your interference level, and this you can change it in the real time, so you can make your physical layer reconfigurable as well as intelligence by using this SoC features as well as the recent advances in the machine learning domain. Okay, so in this rest of the talk, I'll be discussing about this decision making algorithm, how to implement these decision making algorithms on the hardware, because these are slightly easy to understand compared to the deep learning algorithm. So I'll be explaining this algorithms on the hardware, and I'll be demonstrating the this complete design, how we have done the complete implementation on the SoC. Okay, so this completes the discussion on the intelligent and the reconfigurable architecture, and now we'll be moving to the decision making and the algorithms, and how to understand what are the basics of this decision making algorithms and how to implement them on the hardware. So if you have any queries, anything you want to ask, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll switch to the next section. Okay, so let's move to the next one. So I'll be going slightly faster now, because I have covered all the basics and the things. So I'll be giving more of an idea about some of the work which we have done. So I'll be going slightly faster. Okay, so the decision making algorithm which I'm going to discuss now is about the how to take the decision. For example, suppose that you go into the casino and you have the 4 machines, M1, M2, M3 and M4. And I told you that you have these 4 machines, and we don't know how this machine works. You need to identify which machine is the which I should choose, so that I get the highest possible return as possible, as highest possible return. So as a person who don't know anything about the machine, so what we need to do, we need to explore the each machine sufficient number of times, so that we understand how each machine is working. And if we learn sufficient information about each machine, then we should exploit the machine which we feel that, okay, this is the best machine among those 4. So this is always a exploration and the exploitation trade-off, because here you need to explore all the machines sufficient number of times, so that you learn about this machine as much as possible. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you don't explore so much that you end up selecting a suboptimal machine large number of times. So you need to have sufficient strategy to optimize this exploration and exploitation trade-off. And this is a very important research problem, and the people are working on this. Machine learning community has been working on this for quite some times, and there has been some recent progress in this one, this aspects. And this is a very mathematical problem. Okay, because you need to prove mathematically that your algorithms is giving the satisfying this trade-off and the corresponding regret analysis, and you need to prove. So how this algorithm works? These are very simple algorithms. So I'm just giving you the what is the basic about this algorithm. This algorithm, suppose that you have these algorithms are called as a multi arm bandit. Okay, and that's why there is a term called as a arm. So you have you have the multiple arms, say k arms, and you need to find out which arm is the best one. Okay, so you have the n options, like you have the n time slots available with me. So in every time slot, you select the one arm, you get the feedback about the that arm, that okay, how that arm behave, and then you in the next time slot you use that information to select the another arm. So you have n such slots available to you. In each slot you select the arm which is given as a in. Okay, and you get the reward which is the Rn. For example, if you go to the casino example, you select the machine 1, you enter 1 rupees and you got the total 1.1 rupees from the machine. So you got the reward of 0.1. So you get the reward of Rn. So for the ease of exam clarity, we'll assume that every machine you get a positive reward. Okay, that doesn't happen in the practice, but right now we'll assume that. So what you do, you keep a track of how each machine is behaving. So here X indicate what is the reward you got from the machine K up till the time slot N. Okay, so that is the X indicate, and T indicate how many times you have selected the machine K till the slot N. Okay, so X indicate that the how much reward I have got from the machine K till time slot N, and T indicate the number of times I have selected the machine K. So X by T indicates the overall mean of the reward I get from that machine. Okay, so ideally I should select the machine which will give me the highest one. Okay, so you can see that this is the exploitation. So what is this UCB algorithm? This UCB algorithm is a upper confidence bound algorithm. Okay, again, very simple algorithms, codes are available on the internet. So what it does, first it selects all the machines once. Okay, because in the beginning you don't know anything about the machine, so you select all the machines once, and then after that it finds out the quality factor for each machine. And you can see there is a first term which is the X by T, and the second term which is called as the exploration term. And what it does, it forces the algorithm or the user to choose the machine which has not been selected sufficient number of times. So it is somehow forcing the exploration in the algorithm, because you need to make sure that you select each machine sufficient number of times. So this is the exploration term and this is the exploitation term. And you will see that after some time, this term will vanish and you will select the machine based upon only the X by T. Okay. So at the end, so you in each time slot you find out the quality factor for the every machine, and the machine with the highest quality factor will be selected, and you repeat the process for the every time slot. So what you do, you start with the in the beginning for the K time slot you select the each machines once, you update the X and T based upon the reward you got. In the subsequent every time slot you find out the quality factor for every machine based upon your previous value of the X and T. And once you calculate the quality factor, you choose the machine which has the highest quality factor, and you repeat till your end of the horizon has happened. Okay, and this is the one of the optimal algorithm which has been proven to have the logarithmic regret, and this is very widely used. If you remember in the Yahoo search engine, this was the algorithm which they have implemented in around 1990 or around that time. And also, if you see in your Amazon and other e-shopping website, you get a lot of recommendation. And all these recommendations are based upon the basic recommendation systems are based upon this exploration and exploitation trade-off, because you need to explore the, for example, if you are the user, the Amazon need to show the items to you which you are more likely buy. Okay, or for example, in the website advertising, you will, when you go to the particular website, you will be shown the advertise which you are more likely to be click on, because once you click on the advertise, they get the revenue. So these are the algorithms are widely used in those system, and it's a very practical algorithm. And you can see there are extension of the algorithm based upon how you find out the Q factor. Some people take the variance into accounts and other things. So there are extensions out there. So we have also used this algorithm in the wireless communication. For example, in the wireless radio, if you want to select the which channel is the best to get the highest throughput, so you can use the similar algorithm. So what we did, we implemented this algorithm on SoC, which consists of the ARM processor and FPGA. So you can see that we have implemented the UCB algorithm. It is the initialization and it is the comparator to find out the ARM which has the highest Q. Then we made the algorithm reconfigurable. For example, your number of arms may change in the real time. So how to add the multiple Q factor for every arm? So that we made the reconfigurable algorithm. And since I told you that the one algorithm may not work well in the each environment, so what we did, our this architecture will be able to switch between the three algorithm, between the UCB, UCB-V, and UCB-T. Okay, so we were able to do this, and all the codes and everything are available in the market, in the paper and the GitHub. But you can see that you need an intelligence to switch between the UCB-V, UCB-T, and the UCB algorithm. So that intelligence needs to be incorporated. And we use the dynamic partial reconfiguration facility of the FPGA to switch between the algorithms. So this is how you can map the algorithms to the reconfigurable and the intelligent architecture. And then you can always show that if you use only the ARM processor, your latency execution time is very high. But if you use the SoC, your latency time is significantly less. So you can get the significant acceleration factor. So you might have heard about the design of the accelerator, right? So this is how, by using only the ARM processor, your execution will be sequential. But by using the FPGA, you will get the parallel execution and you will get the significant acceleration factor. So you might think that is this so simple, but the things are, it depends upon the algorithm. And if you see that the most of the people who develop these machine learning algorithms, they don't care about the how the hardware works. And you will see that most of the algorithms, they have the a lot of optimization routines which are difficult to implement on the hardware. Okay. For example, this is another extension of the algorithm, which is the KLUCB algorithm. You will see that this algorithm has the optimization function, and compared to the Q function in the UCB, which was very simple. And you will see that implementing such algorithms is very difficult. And here your skill set of understanding the algorithm knowledge and understanding the architecture is very important. So you need to understand which part of the algorithm can be implemented and which part of the algorithm cannot be implemented. And if it is not implemented, how to make the change the algorithm so that it is synthesizable on the hardware. So similar for the KLUCB algorithm, you will see that there is optimization function which is not possible to implement on the hardware. So we modified this to make it work on the hardware. So why we replaced the optimization function with the sum set of the arithmetic and logical operation, and then the some for loop, so that we get the same performance as this one. Again, going into the details is not possible right now with this short time, but you can feel free to read our paper regarding this one. So basically what I want to convey is that just mapping the algorithms to the architecture is very difficult, especially with the machine learning or the signal processing algorithm, where people make use of a lot of optimization subroutine. So you need to have the understanding about the algorithms, and you need to have the understanding about the architecture, and you should be able to modify the algorithms to make it synthesizable on the hardware. So same thing we did in one of our work, and we made the KLUCB algorithm synthesizable on the hardware. And we also integrated with our previous architecture, and now you can see that our algorithm can be able to switch between the UCB, UCB V, UCB T, as well as the KLUCB algorithm. We also add the intelligence where we showed that initial part of your horizon we use the KLUCB algorithm, and later we switch to the UCB algorithm, and we get the better performance than the KLUCB plus UCB. So you can see that if you use only UCB, you get the slightly poor performance, but if you use our algorithm KLUCB plus UCB, you get the significant improvement in performance without compromising on the area and power consumption. Again, I have the slides are already shared with you, and the papers and the codes are already shared with you. So if you want to know more about this, you can feel free to check those things later. So we have shown the execution time, and you can see that our execution time is simply much significantly better than the ARM processor or ARM plus Neon coprocessor. We get the significant improvement in the acceleration factor. And also another interesting thing is that if you use only KLUCB, your execution time is around 30,000 microseconds. But if you use the KLUCB plus UCB, you get the almost 1/10 reduction in the execution time. So that is another contribution from our work here. So this was the work where we showed that the implementation of the decision-making algorithm on the hardware. But again, unless you show the practical usefulness of this system, just implementing the algorithms on the hardware is not sufficient. So what we did, we integrated we implemented this entire wireless transmitter and the receiver on the hardware and integrated with the decision-making algorithm. So this is our complete architecture, where you can see that this is my transmitter physical layer, and this is my receiver physical layer. And here we showed that by using the machine learning algorithm, we are able to switch between the modulation scheme, as well as we are able to switch between the wireless channel. And by using this architecture, we demonstrated that we get the better throughput as well as better performance compared to your conventional physical layer. And that's why the lot of research is happening how to make the wireless physical layer as a intelligent and reconfigurable. So this is one of the contribution from our side in this work. And a couple of days back, this paper is accepted in the IEEE Journal of Circuit and System. And we show that by using this our architecture compared to the only the processor based architecture, we get the significant improvement in the throughput compared to the processor, because processor is doing the sequential part, so we offer the significant improvement in the throughput. Okay, so in the today's lecture, so I gave you the broad overview about the edge computing. I gave you the broad overview about the system on chip and the architecture overview. I gave you the challenges in the design of the mapping of the algorithms on the architecture, how to make the architecture reconfigurable, that we have also discussed. I have also discussed the how to make the algorithm intelligence. Then I gave you the some demonstration about the how to implement the machine learning algorithms on the hardware, and also how to integrate with the physical layer of the for the demonstration. I gave you the architecture. Similarly, we also worked on implementing the deep learning algorithms on the microcontroller and microprocessor. So you have to make your algorithm very small so that they can fit on the microcontroller and the memory available on the chip. We also work on the deep learning algorithm, mapping the deep learning algorithms on the hardware. But again, those discussion on those things takes needs a larger discussion, and also the audience need to have the prior background about the deep learning, FPGA designs and all. So in the today's lecture, the aim was to give you the brief overview about this field of research. And moving forward, just to summarize the today's discussion, so we discuss about the mapping the AI algorithms to the efficient architecture, which is very critical to meet the desired latency and the security constraint. Due to the ever-growing complexity of your AI ML algorithms or even the wireless algorithm, and the inbuilt complexity, complex mathematical modeling, because if you see a lot of mathematical optimization expressions are being used in the machine learning, and most of them are not synthesizable. Algorithms to architecture mapping is non-trivial. It takes a lot of efforts and it's a very challenging. Writing the code in the C or in the TensorFlow, it usually does not take much time. But if same thing to implement on the hardware, it's a lot of challenge, and it needs a significant skill set, and it needs a lot of learning to implement something on the hardware, and not only to implement something on the hardware, to make it work and to show the demonstration. Okay, so the significant, and still many of you see that the work in the industry is focused on only the implementing the algorithms on the hardware. Very few of them are focused right now on the reconfigurable and intelligence, but that will happen in the future. So significant efforts are needed to make the architecture reconfigurable and embed the intelligence so as to meet the area, power and power constraint. So in that direction, you have the research area called Edge AI, then in-memory computing. So in case of the deep learning, you have to read and write a lot of data between the memory. So how about moving the computations directly inside the memory so that you can reduce the communication overhead. Also the secured AI, like how to integrate the encryption decryption algorithm inside your architecture, that is also interesting area to look forward to. Okay, so this completes the my discussion on the implementing on the machine learning on SOC. So if you have any queries, feel free to ask. If you want to ask me to want me to discuss anything in more detail, feel free to ask your queries.
So there was one question on the chat. Can you please?
Yeah, I'll take it. So, uh, so yeah, okay. So what is the question? Please explain the lower part of the SoC architecture. Is it a part of the hardware? Yeah, so everything is a single chip. So you can see that this is the single chip. You have the ARM processor here. You have, this is the FPGA. In some part of the FPGA, you have implemented the machine learning algorithm, which is the multi-arm bandwidth algorithm. And this machine learning algorithm, you can see that it reconfigures the hardware, like the data modulation. Here you can switch between the, say, COM, BPSK or QPSK. Here you have, say, 5 channels are available to you.
So thanks from the management and our event team for accepting our invitation immediately and for the explanation of such a good project, a challenging
Deepa ma'am,
project. That
Deepa ma'am,
is
I think sir is explaining still. Can you please hold on?
so and for a challenging.
Hello.
Uh, Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah. So here we have used this Zinc 706. So this is again one of the SoC available from the Xilinx. It has the if you are familiar with the Zybo or Z board, it is the next version of this Zybo and Z board. So it is just not a FPGA, it's a SoC. It has the FPGA and the ARM processor on a single chip.
So what will be the approximate cost of these boards, Zinc boards?
It depends. So if you use the Zybo boards, they are around 20K. If you use Z board, they are around 40K. And this board is around because it is around 2.8 lakhs or something. Because here
Okay.
you also have the RF front end with you. So this is used for the software defined radio SDR. So you have the analog front end antennas for the transmission over the air. So these are slightly expensive.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Questions from the participants, please ask your questions or you can post in the chat box.
Hi sir, myself Babu. Sir,
Yes.
in internet I searched like a ping board. They're using AI algorithms also. So
Yeah.
can you explain about the ping board? So what we can
Yeah,
use for?
so that's a good question. So you can see that the industry wants to attract the lot of CSE people in this domain. Okay, and because you can see that the learning the HDL and the VHDL and Verilog, it's challenging. And if I see right, most of the 90% of the engineering college in India, they have now ignored the teaching the Verilog and VHDL in the domain, or many of the MTech students we get, they have not learned the Verilog and VHDL at their undergraduate level. And and this is challenging because this having this understanding of this Verilog and VHDL itself is a difficult task, and getting them working on the FPGA board, it's challenging. Also, it's these are boards are slightly expensive, so getting that all the supports at the every university is very difficult. So what they are doing, they're trying to see how they can attract as many as people as possible in this domain. So there are a lot of efforts is happening on how to convert the C code into the Verilog code automatically, so that people who understand the C can be able to run their algorithms on the hardware. Similarly, Python is one of the popular language in the CSC community. So what they have done, they have developed the tool which converts the Python code into the Verilog or VHDL1. And then they have developed the system, core system around that, and they have come up with this ping board, which anyone who knows the Python can use, and they can implement their algorithms on the hardware. And with the Python, you can also build the GUI, so you can build the complete design which has the GUI as well as your hardware integrated together.
Is it possible to do PDR, partial dynamic reconfiguration, the ping board also?
No, it is possible, but the flow is slightly challenging. So these are not for the DPR. It is best to design your algorithm at the Verilog level.
Okay, sir.
Because all these the tools which are there for C to Verilog conversions and all, it's very difficult to get the DPR working on them, because your flow is, you need to build a lot of different bit stream, and that is difficult to do unless you have the RTL code available with you. So if you are looking at the DPR, then Verilog and VHDL or some kind, we are able to do it with the HLS also. That is possible, but not with this Pink and other SDSOC.
Okay, sir. So PDR is possible with Vertex or Zinc boards. Is it so, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, that partial reconfiguration is supported in all the chips.
Okay. Participants, any questions?
Thank you, sir.
So I think there was one question posted. How do we go for estimation in co-design? I think you have
So
one
basically
participant has
we do
posted this question.
the estimation. Means, what do you mean by estimation here?
They are asking for channel estimation, sir. How do we
Yeah,
go for estimation in co-design?
yeah, channel estimation is nothing but either you use the maximum likelihood channel estimation or MMSC estimation, right? And if you see the maximum likelihood one, it is nothing but the division between the two vectors or the matrix. So it is not that difficult to implement. MMSC is slightly more challenging, but again, if you understand the algorithm well, you should be able to write that code and get it working on the hardware. But and also IPs also, those are the paid IPs. But as an academician, if you request, you can always get those IP for the free. So I believe there are the IPs for the LTE channel estimation in the available in the Vivado. But again, any algorithm, if you see signal processing, once you understand the algorithm, most of them will involve some matrix manipulation, eigenvalue calculations, and all. We should be able to write the code and get it working on the hardware with some approximation, not same as your MATLAB or C code.
So, Ramya, can we?
Yes, ma'am. So, thank you, sir. On behalf of the organizing team and all the participants, I would like to place my sincere thanks to Dr. Sumit, sir, for accepting our invitation in spite of his very busy schedule. So, I'm sure that it would definitely have reached well by all the participants, and we are looking forward for your continued support and association with us in future also. Thank you once again, and over to Deepa, ma'am, now.
So extend the gratitude from our management side for giving such a wonderful lecture. That is the toughest challenge of implementing algorithms on architecture for edge computing applications. Your session, I hope the participants will make use of this session and try to implement some hardware project on FPGAs. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And
Thank you, Ramya.
we
And
look forward to inviting you in the future sessions also, sir.
sure. I'll be always be available. So thank you very much, and all the best to everyone for their next lectures and sessions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.